is rolling, and then yeah, then it's live. We just started doing this live streaming stuff with that superhero movie class.
It's still setting up, just another second.
Yeah, it's like it's all the excitement of live something or other, but it's good. Hey, Mariah. Hey, everybody, turn on your cameras.
We're live, Adam.
Awesome. We're live on YouTube, live stream. It's the Film Spark channel, Film Spark at ASU. And we are in the midst of the Film TV Career Boot Camp, which of course was created by ASU alum, Emmy nominated Howard Burkons, who just wanted to give current students the sort of leg up that he didn't get when he graduated some years ago from ASU and moved to Hollywood to pursue his dream of a life in entertainment, and was able to fulfill that dream. And of course, we have folks tuning in via the YouTube live stream on our Film Spark channel who are from programs across the Herberger Institutes of Design and the Arts, various schools, and pursuing careers in the creative industries. And today we're going to be focusing our panel discussion led by Amy Rivera and the friends that she has brought to the Zoom interaction we'll be having today. We're going to focus on a really critical piece of professional development, and that is sometimes called networking. Not my favorite term. It's really relationship building. How can you build a meaningful group of friends at the end of the day that finds alignments and collaborations and opportunities with each other that last over time? And that is particularly challenging at the beginning. One thing I often tell students is try to think of it as no different from when you first arrive to college or university. And very intuitively and naturally, you start identifying with the people that you vibe with and that you have overlapping interests. And eventually, those overlapping interests and good feelings that you have with those people lead into these sorts of relationships that do last a lifetime. And your network really begins with those fellow students, fellow aspiring artisans that you're meeting right now in school. But let me pass the floor. But before I do, because I didn't introduce myself, I'm Adam, Professor Collis, and I run this program called ASU Film Spark, which is can be thought of as the ASU Hollywood connection, the ASU Embassy in Hollywood. We're an industry relations program, and we're designed to help students and alumni of Arizona State University fulfill their dreams of lives and careers in entertainment. And so with that, I'm going to pass the floor. I'm going to thank all our guests first and allow Amy to introduce them. But I'm going to now yield the floor over to Amy Rivera. And thank you so much, Amy, for doing this for us. We really appreciate it.
No, of course. Thank you so much, Adam, for having me. And, for everyone who's joining, I know this small group here, I've already introduced myself to, but for everyone else who's kind of joining, my name is Amy Rivera, and I've been running this networking bootcamp session for the past couple of days. And, it's been really wonderful being able to help advise you guys on the importance of networking, because that's really the crux of kind of navigating how to build your relationships out here in Los Angeles. And, it's such an important factor when you're kind of navigating your career, and it's the relationships that you build starting right now, that's really going to be the foundation for hopefully leading to opportunities and success in whatever endeavors that you guys are pursuing. I'm currently working at Skydance Media as a film executive, and I've been fortunate enough to have a group of my friends here with me who I've all met through networking, and all of them have various experiences, in this industry, and their career paths as well that they'll be happy to share. And I'm just going to go through it and introduce them to you guys. And then I'm going to have them kind of dive into their stories, because I think what's really important is that there is no one way to get to, your eventual goal, what you'll realize everyone kind of zigzags, and it's all through networking, the relationships that they've all built over the course of their time here in Los Angeles that has led them to where they're at today. So one of our first guests is Wei Chen, and he's currently a program manager at Rideback Television. And, if you guys aren't familiar with Rideback, producer Dan Lin, who is a very successful producer in this industry, most known for like the Lego movie franchises. He had started his own kind of side incubator, which Wei runs. And Wei, if you like to kind of dive into your story and kind of what led you to where you're at now, and if you can incorporate how networking became a pivotal factor in helping you along your path in this career.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, just really quick, I started off, I grew up in San Francisco. I went to UCLA. Maybe like many of you, I didn't know anyone in the industry. I graduated from UCLA. I tried to get an assistant job at any production company, any agency. No one would interview me. No one would even reply emails. So I went back to UCLA Extension, took courses to get internships. And Amy and a lot of the panelists know, I've told this story many times. Practically every job I've gotten, it was hard. It was, people didn't want to hire me, to be quite honest with you. It wasn't that I was a bad interview, but it was just people had their doubts. But with every one of the jobs I received or I got, it was really from recommendation, people who called on my behalf. And a lot of that was from networking. It really was starting from my internships to my assistant job at Endeavor, ABC Family, CBS, putting in the hard work and getting to know everyone and being nice and be indispensable, all that stuff. It got me to where I am now today, at Rideback. So I'll keep it short for now. Does that answer the question, Amy, for now?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give you guys also a heads up, in this time period, as you guys are listening to, everyone's story, feel free to have questions in the chat. And, afterwards, I'm going to kind of go through and, ask some of these questions to everybody. If you have any specific questions, just make sure that you specify in the chat if you have a specific question for any of my guests. I'm just kind of going to go around right now and just hear everyone's story. So yeah, Wei, thank you so much for sharing. Next, Tegan, who is one of my favorite people, has one of the most best personalities in the world. She, like myself, has definitely had a fun zigzagging in our career paths. But it's the lessons that you learn along the way that help get you the grind and the skills to get to where you're at. And Tegan, if you want to share a little bit about your experiences coming to LA, your career path, and how networking really led to where you're at right now, that would be great.
Absolutely. So hi, everybody. I'm Tegan. I like to, when I go out and have any sort of drink meetings or things with other executives, I like to ask people what their entertainment pedigree is. So this is mine. I moved to LA a little over 7 years ago, and much like Wei, could not find a job to save my life. I was teaching swim lessons and tutoring in the suburbs. But eventually I got a job in commercial production, and I worked there for about 4 months, and then they ran out of money to pay me, which I've learned is a pretty common thing that happens in entertainment. Was not, aware of it then, but now I am. So I worked there for 4 months, and then I ended up getting a job off the UTA job list. And anyone who works in the industry will tell you, oh my God, you actually got a job off the UTA job list? And yes, I've gotten 2, strangely enough. So the first one I got was for one of the largest management companies in the industry called Untitled Entertainment. And just to show you how green I was when I got that job, going into the interview, I had to look up the difference between agents and managers because I just didn't know. I was new. But I went in, I interviewed with the head of production and literary management. And I remember sitting down on her couch and she was like, thanks for coming. And I said, I'm so excited to be here. So after a number of rounds of interviews, she called me and said, you don't have what I'm looking for. You don't have a network. You don't have experience in the industry, but I like your energy. And if I have to spend 10 hours a day with somebody, I'd like it to be you. So that's how that started. And then I worked really hard at Untitled for about 1.5 years. And at the time, Zoe Saldana, her sisters, and their company were clients of Untitled. So a couple managers helped me get the director of development position over there. And at the time, Cinestar, which is the name of the company, had deals at Lionsgate, Televisa, and Awesomeness TV. So I ran Zoe's company for the last 10 months of their deals, at which point the deal ended and they ran out of money to pay me for the second time. And so then I was kind of like a free agent. I did a lot of consulting. I ended up having to go back to assisting and temping for a while, just kind of, make money and stay in town. And eventually I started producing on my own, because after a number of kind of harrowing executive interviews, I had to kind of reevaluate. And if you've ever been in an interview, especially in entertainment, the first thing they ask you is, so what do you really want to do? And my answer was, I want to be a producer. And so instead of doing what I had been doing, which was execing and developing, I decided to be a producer. And so my partner and I linked up just about 2 years ago. We do kind of dark driven content. Our company is called Dark Matter Entertainment. So horror, thriller, dark comedy. Meanwhile, I was still temping, to pay rent. And then in January of 2019, I answered another job posting on the UTA job list for a part-time personal assistant to a celebrity. And the email address in there was a management company I knew. And so I called my friend who worked over there and I was like, hey, who's the celebrity? Because if they suck, I don't want this job. And she was like, no, it's Tia Mori and I love her and I love you. I'm going to call her right now. So I think I sent my resume on a Tuesday, and by the next Tuesday I was working for Tia. So it went really quickly, which is sort of unheard of in the industry too. You generally have a lot of hoops you have to jump through to get a job. But I started as Tia's part-time personal assistant. And funny enough, one of the first bigger meetings I went to with her and her team, all her managers and agents, her manager had said, oh, I want to set her up at Mar Vista, which is this company that does, Christmas movies and female-driven content. And but the manager's like, yeah, I want to set her up at Mar Vista, but I don't know anyone over there. And I was like, I do, little assistant in the corner. And so I set up a meeting with Mar Vista, and then I set her up with Muse, which is another company where I had a friend from networking. And 4 months later, when her show wrapped, and she came back from these meetings, she was like, I want to start a production company. And I was like, I know how to do that. So that's been a year and some change since then. We did a Christmas movie last summer. We're producing one now with our 4OWN. We're looking to do a multi-picture deal with Lifetime. We're working on an unscripted show, an animated family comedy. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But yeah, it's, I think I learned very early on at Untitled, when I saw people moving up, who got promoted, that everybody sort of had to have their something, right? You're the guy that knows all the UK talent, or you're the guy who's really good with aspiring ingenue actresses, and everybody kind of had their niche. And so my thing was, I'm going to out network everybody I know. And so for, those few years that I was an assistant and an executive, I went out every night of the week and on the weekends, drinks, dinners, panels, screenings, coffees, all the things, because it was really important to me to build a network. And that culminated in my networking group, which is called the Young Hollywood Mafia, which in June will have its 5-year anniversary. We have about 100 members. We're not having mixers anymore because there's a virus. But other than that, it's been, it was just something where I saw a void in networking, and I wanted to make it easier and more fun for people, including myself. And so I did. And I think, that's kind of thing, you want to do the job you want and well, do the job you have, but also do the job you want. And just always keep looking forward. That was much longer than Way. I'm sorry.
No, that's great, because I think also it's a really great example of perseverance, and trying to navigate your way through this industry, as we all do. And some of the obstacles that you face, if you're, in one company or you're in one direction, it's not leading you to the promotion or the job that you want. It's trying to figure out how do you navigate out of that, or a way where you can find your own niche and lead it to a job that eventually will be, hopefully your dream job. And so I think that's a really great example of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then next is John. John, I've known for years, and he is in a lovely position where he owns his own management and production company and dictates the rules of what he loves to do. But it took a little bit of time to get there. So please share your story, John, and let us know.
Yeah, I started in this business as an agent's assistant. Started out at Paradigm, and then from Paradigm, when was that? Paradigm, I think I started in 1998 or 1999. I'm old, probably much older than these other executives we have here today. But yeah, so 1999, I started out at Paradigm and TV Lit, and then after Paradigm, I went over to Acme Talent Literary, which was a smaller agency, but working under a man called Mickey Freiberg. Mickey Freiberg in this business was infamous for book rights and book sales. So he kind of taught me what I do, majorly what I do today, which is book rights. I sell a lot of books, but started Gravity Squared in about 2005 or 2015 is when I started Gravity Squared. And now I'm just managing writers. I manage writers, directors, and I've got a couple producers as well. But majority of the business is book rights. I've got about 150 books under my management. So I sell a lot of books to Hollywood. Some of those I develop as well and produce. But how I got here was those early days of working in the agencies. And when I started Gravity Squared, I basically called everyone I knew and all those relationships that I built when I was at the agency. And I said, hey, look, I would just love to grab a coffee with you or grab lunch or whatever. And it was those relationships that really got me to where I am today. And using one of those relationships as an example, just recently, I had a book here. It's called Being Human. It's about a client of mine named Judy Human. And so I signed Judy about 4 years ago, and we got her paired up with a writer, and we got the book published and went out with the book. So when you do something like that, you get a lot of requests to read the book as well. So this book we had out for maybe about 2 months, and someone connected with me and said, hey, I would love to read the book. And they actually went through the publisher to get the book, and we'd love to look at the book and blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, I know David, I'll call him personally. So it's David Permit. Permit produced Hacksaw Ridge and Blind Date and a couple other movies. So I've known Permit for 20 years. So we just haven't connected in a while, but we got together for this one. He's producing the film for this book. So that's a relationship that I've cultivated for 20 years. So these relationships, the ones that you have right here today with all these students and all of us, are relationships that you're going to have to cultivate one day and turn something into a great project like this one will be. So yeah, that's kind of my story and how I got here. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up is Dan. And Dan is a great example of, having long-term relationships, because he and I knew each other from when we were assistants, and I don't even remember how far back that goes, but it's a while. And it all started through probably some mixer events or through friends of friends, and over the course of time, we can maintain that friendship and that relationship. And now Dan is currently head of BuzzFeed Films. Is that correct? The term in that department, and it's super exciting. And I've watched Dan go from job to job, and we've all kind of navigated our way into the careers that we're in now. And, we both have similar experiences of the struggles and obstacles with that. And, Dan, I'd love for you to share on your journey of how you got to where you're at right now.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Journey was, I'm born and raised in LA. I was in accounting when I came out of school. I loved movies and television, but I never knew that I'd work in them until I saw an article pop up when I was in my shitty cubicle, and it said top 10 bullshit jobs in Hollywood, and number 1 was talent agent, and I read a book called The Mailroom, and I was like, oh, I can do that. So I worked my way up through a couple of agencies, made the mistake of being on the talent side, thinking that I don't get starstruck by anybody and I can negotiate deals, so it makes the most sense. And I also was too lazy to read. Eventually, I got into the agency business knowing that 98% of people that go in come out in some capacity, whether they leave the industry or they segue on to other areas. But it's a great place to meet people, make your connections, and kind of grow your class, if you will, that you come up with. So I ended up segueing out to development. And there were times where in between development jobs, I would always begin to cultivate my own projects as a producer. And now that's like the point where I'm leading development for a great international media company. We're about to close a studio deal. And then I've also been able to carve out projects of my own that I'm selling as a producer, which is a really kind of funky, unique situation. But the point was, I've always tried to view things as, if I can't do something under an umbrella, I'm going to do my own thing regardless, because I'm going to make my own self advance. As far as networking, I always thought that it was this dirty word, like it was very fraternity, like, hey bro, what's up bro, let's be bros bro. Like it was in a way that like I didn't understand in my life, so I didn't do it. However, I think one of the things that Tegan said was very key, which is that a lot of times, it's not the only way, but a lot of people who advance in the business do so by having some sort of calling card, something that they find a niche for themselves where they add value. I had this weird thing that I did. I was the script guy. So at the agency that I went to, in a time when it was harder to find materials and things were slightly less digital, I would always find scripts. Like if anybody needed to find a script for something, I would have it. And I started doing this ridiculous thing called Dan's Catch before it got me in trouble with multiple studios, where I would kind of be this net and I would scoop up all the scripts that would go around, and every week I'd send them out to a distro list, and then I'd meet somebody and I'd be like, hey, or, do you want to be on this? Or people would hit me up and go, hey, this my thing was not supposed to be forwarded, but people would forward it to other people, and then people would hit me up directly going like, hey, I heard about this, can I get on Dan's Catch? And so I created a way for me to get my name out, and at the same time for people to come to me, for somebody who's not necessarily a natural networker. So the point is trying to figure out whatever your tools are. Hopefully you fall into it. But the other big point is, and this goes for advancing yourself in the business as well as for the aspiring producers in the lot, developing your own projects. It's all about finding the holes. It's whether for the networking stuff, it's about finding your niche. And then as a producer, it's going and saying, I'd really love to do this, and there's just nothing like this, or here's an audience that's not being served. So it's kind of the same thing, is making sure you look around and step back and kind of take stock of your situation and go, how can I add value? And then you start with the best thing that you can do in this business is become what I call an incoming call business, right? You don't want to always be making the calls, but you want people calling you. So if you can come up with ways to get people to call you, I think that's always to your advantage.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up is Chris or Rajita. And Chris is killing it right now as an independent producer. I'm constantly seeing endless announcements, which is super exciting. And he owns his own company called Nightshade. However, you didn't just graduate and landed where you're at right now. You definitely had to build relationships along the way to get there. So please share your story.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Let me change over to the gallery view so I can actually see some faces. That face. Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's cool to see everybody. I am now. To to do the long story short, lie, I graduated from USC. I got my undergrad degrees in English and theater, which was two really bizarre moves because, if English doesn't work out, I could fall back on theater. Long story short, I got into USC for playwriting. So I got my master's there in that. While I was at USC, I was able to kind of do, because I was a master's student, I could do like a lateral entry into the film school. So I was taking a lot of screenwriting, TV writing courses, because I figured as a writer, whatever I could have in my battle chest would help me out in my career. So especially if I was going to stay in Los Angeles. So my very last semester, I was taking a screenwriting class and became really good friends with the dude Steve Desmond, who's an amazing writer who's blowing up in a big way. He asked me what I was going to do with myself after I graduated, and with a master's degree in playwriting and undergrad degree in English and theater, I was like, I don't know. Roadshow Pictures and in development, whatever the hell that was, sounds great. I would love to try to get an internship, and that's exactly what I did. I went into Village Roadshow, started interning in development, which again, I didn't know what that was, but I fell in love with it right away. While I was doing that, I was also working full-time as a projectionist from eons ago. It used to be a job people actually did. So with a large interning class, I kind of bubbled to the top because my job as a projectionist was to watch every movie on Thursday night before it opened to make sure the build was right. There's no problems with the print before the audience watched it. So come weekend read meetings on Friday morning, I'd walk in having seen all 6 new movies and I could give a detailed report. So the president of production, Dana Goldberg, who is now Amy's boss, she kind of thought I was a huge asset. So job opened up. I ended up working as an assistant to the VP of development, the EVP, which was 3 very different hats: physical production, development, and human resources. At some point, one of my guys I interned with, he got a job at Rogue Pictures, which was a genre division of Focus Features at the time. He ended up getting a DOD job and he was looking for his replacement, and he put my name in the ring without me even knowing it. So he said, "Hey, I put you up for this job. You should come in and interview for it." And I was like, easiest job in the world interview to get, I guess. So I went in and, I've always been a horror guy. I've always loved genre. I wanted to start out as special effects artists way back when. So when I went into Rogue, I fell in love with it right away because they specialized in horror movies. They did like The Strangers, The Last House on the Left, The Unborn. They acquired like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, stuff like that. So I instantly fell in love with it. And since I had done some physical production office work, that kind of made me an asset for the studio because you're dealing with a lot of paperwork, looking at hot costs, looking at production reports, call sheets, the stuff that production office sends into executives that typically just kind of like put it right in the circular file. Gosh, I really kind of lost my thread, didn't I? So anyway, worked there for a number of years, had a great time. We were bought by Relativity, who wanted the library, and then they squandered it. And then, that's going to be all over YouTube, isn't it? Yay! And so my boss, Adrian Biddle, had partnered up with Brian Bertino, who wrote and directed The Strangers. They formed their own production company, asked me to come along and head up development, which I still don't know what it is. And had a great time with them. We made a couple movies, one called Mockingbird. We made one called The Monster. One of the big ones for me was a project that I discovered and developed with them called The Blackcoat's Daughter. We managed to get it made in Canada in 2015. We sold it at TIFF to A24. It was like a really exciting time because we really kind of put on that, they were no longer able to afford to pay me. So, I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to work for somebody that can't afford to pay me, it might as well be myself. So I kind of took a couple projects with me, formed Nightshade Entertainment, and kind of been off and running. I most recently had a movie open last month on video on demand called We Summon the Darkness. And now we're actually rolling out to drive-ins, which is kind of wild, but it's the time, you know. So yeah, I mean, everything I did that got me to where I am was all from networking, which is absolutely critical. You know, even kind of getting in touch with this, I knew Amy from Village Roadshow Connection at a pitch fest. I know Professor Adam from you know, Family Friends, which is kind of bizarre, and so here I am and having a great time.
Yeah, it's you know, I think especially the drive-in resurgence has been fascinating, you know, but it is again, it's the times and it's the Wild West these days, and people are trying to make what we do work in the constraints that we're under. So it's interesting to see, you know, that format becoming, you know, something that now people are actively using as a way to watch movies, and we'll see what happens with that, you know, in the next year. Thank you, Chris. And last but not least is Derek Epich, who is not only killing it as independent manager with his own company, but he's also an ASU alum. So Derek, for everyone here who are and will be ASU alums, tell us your story of how you kind of broke into this industry and what led you to where you're at.
Well, yeah, I mean, I went to ASU. Sorry if I try to keep it short. It probably won't happen because I've had a lot of coffee. But my computer's crashed like 7 times, so I missed 3/4 of Tegan's lengthy monologue. Yeah, I went to ASU. My start was, you know, I'm a typical ASU guy. Oddly, it's so weird to think back that, you know, I was a total. Are we allowed to curse on this? This is live, right?
Yeah, I try to minimize it if you can.
My degree, you know, like I come from a, you know, like working class, middle-ish class family. Everyone's middle class in Arizona. I got a full ride to ASU and U of A because I grew up, you know, right down the street from Arizona State. You know, I wanted to go to U of M, but it was only partial. I ended up going, and like literally like a total stereotypical ASU party kid. I like lost my scholarship like literally like 2 weeks in. Anyway, so like 2 weeks in, I stopped like showing up to classes, had all this like freedom. And like the nice thing that kind of came of it, and it's like something that like really allowed me to kind of process who I am today, is like, because I like the analytical, it's why I went into the honors. They had this honors program in engineering. I went into art history and started traveling in between, which led to like a career in modeling, which led to like being kind of like in the entertainment industry. I was like supposed to be in Zoolander and all this nonsense. And like, you know, I ended up living in New York in between Europe. And so like I have a lot of friends in the New York community, be it in fashion, photography, arts, whatever. So when I went back to school, I always kind of kept that in mind. Finished my degrees at ASU in econ and finance. And like right away realized when the credit crisis happened in 2007, when I graduated 2008, because I took some time off, it was like, okay, so my career is already totally unorthodox and trajectory was all over the place. It's like left and right brain battling. And I came out to LA in 2010 actually to act because, you know, vanity is a bitch. And I was just like, okay, like, you know, I'm still 20 in my mind. I haven't really lived a life yet. I'm like still a pretty boy. Let's do this. And about like 6 months in, I was like, this sucks. Like, it's like every actor in my class was somebody I recognized from like, you know, Entourage to like, Sex and the City. And they were like broke and they had been like on shows for years. And I'm like, how are you getting by? And they're like, my wife supports me or my husband supports me. And I'm like, nah. And so simultaneously through networking, I had met a bunch of other actors in West Hollywood and like met a bunch of filmmakers like through this like Tarantino director network. And this one actress was like, me and her hit it off, introduced me to her cousins. And I had like a total like D-bag throwdown Oscar party at Chateau Marmont. I had the whole Bar Marmont reserved out for my birthday for Oscar weekend. And it was like, you know, everybody in like fashion, the whole thing. It was like a New York party. And one of those cousins of that actress invited her fiance, and it was this manager producer. And I'm not going to say his name because you can look it up if you want to Google it and figure out, put the dots together. But like he came up, and mind you, I showed up like 3 hours late to my own birthday. But He like came up to me, said happy birthday, and then cursed me out, and then I kicked him out of the party. And simultaneously, he offered me a job, and he tried to offer me a job for like the next year. And after about a year of everyone kind of telling me you should take it, he had a movie going with Liam Neeson at Warner Brothers. He had like some stuff going. He had this writer, Brad Inglesby, who's like an amazing commercial writer. And he was like, you should come work with me. You'll cut your teeth and da da da. So I finally caved after I talked to a bunch of people because I was like, this acting thing isn't going to work out. And I just kind of fell in love. I worked there for a couple of years. I was this, independent exec. I don't really know what that means at a management company that has like 4 employees. And with the managers producing like one thing every 5 years. I really don't know what that means, but okay, I did that. I gave notes on scripts and got no credit, so development. And then I went like him and I had a falling out because, that was his personality. It was my personality. And, I did short form content. And then after failing in that space, I mean, I made some stuff, but it was like the money was like, I was going to be hanging out in the arts district before it was cool, where I was shooting these commercials, begging for money in 5 years. So I ended up, I was like, okay, like, what should I do? And it's like, I always loved scripts and working with writers. And it was like everyone from like directors that I loved to partners at big firms were like, you should get into management. I went and worked at Gotham. Then I worked with this other manager named Lou Stobie for a couple of years. And then, when I was helping build a business, I feel like I was always helping build other people's businesses. And it was just like, I'm not young. I've been doing this. I've always been betting on myself because I'm not in a big operation where they're just feeding me clients. So like, and no one's ever given me anything. So why don't I just do it for myself? And so for God, it's almost been a year now that I've been doing this, and most of which feels like in this eternal damnation of pandemic post-COVID or COVID era LA, but like it feels the same because I've been working from home the whole time anyway. So nothing much has changed. So I've been doing that, and like it's just been really fun. Lately most of my stuff has been in TV, but I do indie filmmaking, TV, and then occasionally Amy will get a submission, which is not prevalent or ready for a studio fair. But I keep on.
Yes, you do. But also, I love your story because you started off on one path. You came out here pursuing acting, and it led you into a different direction, and that's totally okay. There's a lot of people who will graduate and decide that they want to pursue one path, but if that doesn't end up working out, it doesn't mean that you can't find a career in this industry. But through networking and through relationships, it kind of organically led you to where you're at right now. So, thank you for sharing. And, to my group, I'm going to just go throw you guys some questions to, answer for everyone here. So in terms of networking, I think one of the biggest questions that, I'll hear from students is like, sure, I hear like I need to network, but how do I do it? How does it even work? And what I've been teaching them, is that, yes, when you're working and when you're asking someone to grab coffee, and at the end of the day, the goal is to talk about business and maybe hopes that it will lead to an opportunity down the line. To me, the most successful ways of networking is approaching the process in a way where you're looking at it as building a meaningful relationship and a meaningful friendship. And I like to, get to know who the person is. I like to find commonalities, before going into at some point business, which essentially will be an organic process. But I feel like when you're approaching it in a less transactional way, it makes networking a lot easier, and hopefully end up making some real good friends out of this. And I'd love to have you guys talk about your processes when you started out networking and what you guys learned, and how what kind of tools really kind of helped you successfully network here in the industry and make the relationships that you guys have now. And then also, if you have any examples of meaningful relationships, like John had mentioned, that you've built years ago, and now that meaningful relationship really helped you in your career, that also would be great to share. So I'll open the floor for you guys.
I'll take that one. We'll start with it. A couple of anecdotes. So the first thing is you can't be afraid to ask. I mean, some people just aren't going to respond to you, and that's fine. If you do approach somebody, which you should, first do your homework. Try to get an idea of who they are, where they've been, you can raise talking points that are interesting and ask them particular questions that show that you've done your research. So that way they go, oh, okay, this person is thoughtful and is making a good use of my time. I will try, I don't always, but I will definitely make a good effort to talk to a lot of people who reach out to me who are already in the business, because it's, today you could be my subordinate and then tomorrow you could be my boss. And I think it's important to always keep that in mind. A few anecdotes. There is the head of one of the major agencies in town. I saw that he went to the same school for gifted children that I went to, because I peaked very young and then got progressively less smart. But anyway, we went to this very small school for gifted children together for different years. He's older than me, but I hit him up and I said, hey, I went to Merman, you went to Merman, what up? It was a little bit more eloquent than that. And then he said, yeah, let's have lunch. So now I have a relationship with the head of one of the biggest agencies in town just on that factor. Another one was a woman who lived on my hall in my apartment building. When I got to know her as my neighbor, she said, she knew I liked to play basketball. And she's like, oh, I know a guy who plays in this game. Maybe sometimes I need extra people. Let me see. And so she hooked me in, and that guy happened to be a very well-known entertainment attorney, and a number of people in that game were in the business. And then I ended up, from somebody that I met at that game, developing the project, which we sold to Lionsgate. So, sometimes these things just happen organically and they're gifted to you. I'll give you a last one. You just have to take things and follow up. So there's a guy who used to head a studio called Legendary. And the same neighbor who I had was childhood friends with his wife. And so she, and this story will prove my earlier point, she reached out to her friend, this guy's wife, and she reached out to him and said, will you take a meeting? When I was a very young executive, he said, okay. I went in, and by the end of the meeting, he had said to me, I originally thought he's just a guy who is a very good human and likes to pay it forward, and he has all the money and success in the world and doesn't need to. But he said, at the beginning of this meeting, I thought it would be a pity meeting, but now I know that I'm going to end up meeting you in the future as our relationship continues. And that was probably the highest compliment that he could have given me. And now he's somebody that I don't call him all the time, but if I really have a Godfather question, he's somebody that I can go to if I really need something. So those are examples of things. Sometimes they fall in your lap. Sometimes you gotta just go make them happen and take advantage of serendipity. But if there's an opportunity that's presented in front of you, do your homework, don't let go, and follow up. Because the biggest thing that you can do to make yourself look stupid is if you engage and then don't follow up.
I would love to add to that. There are a lot of ways to force yourself to network with people, like Amy, Chris, and Tegan, and Derek, and we're all connected via something called tracking boards. And these tracking boards sometimes do mixers, do drink mixers. So there's a lot of mixers and tracking boards and groups that you can get associated with that have get-togethers, and they kind of force you to talk to people. So that's another great way of really just throwing yourself into the mix of networking. But yeah, you have to actually do the networking, but it helps if you're forced to talk to people in an environment that is like a tracking board, that is like a mixer or something like that. So that always helps, is when you're forced to those. So yeah.
And I'll add, absolutely, when you get into those mixers and when you're networking, I think one key is to really just be a good listener. Listen to what the other person is saying, pay attention, be present, and being sincere. I think sincerity goes a very long way. People can tell whether you're trying too hard, trying to be fake. So just be yourself. Sincerity is, I think it's often, it's appreciated, but it's just often not spoken about. So.
And I want to add, because, I know it takes a lot to get a job in the industry, but once you have a job in the industry, at least for me working at Untitled, I had the privilege of having a boss that was a really great networker. That's why agents and managers are really great people to start under, because they kind of know everybody at all points in the industry. And what I did was when I would set a meeting for my boss, Jennifer, I would just automatically set a meeting for me and the assistant. So everything she did, I met their assistant, which makes it really great just for interaction purposes. But also, all of those people from when we were assistants are now, agents, executives, whatnot. So, to echo Dan's comment, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be hurt if people aren't receptive, because that happens too. But also understand that it's just the way of the industry, and everybody knows that. I remember when my friend Dan, who is now my friend, but at the time we were both assistants, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to grab a drink?" And I was like, "Wait, is this a date?" Because I just didn't know. And now I know that everybody asks people out for drinks, and some people actually date the people that they go out for drinks with. So that happens too, not me. But that's another story, kids. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask, and like, honest to God, like, put yourself out there. Like I said, for the first 3 years of my career, I didn't have an open night unless somebody canceled drinks on me, so it's really cast wide. Go John.
I saw that Julie just asked the question in the chat saying, are there any particular networking events in LA? There's one that I go to, and they do it 2 times a year, called Little Black Book. It's a membership kind of basis, but Stephanie, who runs it, is pretty open to letting executives in the business, no matter what executive level they are, into that. But Little Black Book is also really good, and they usually have 120 people there at least. So that's always been a really good one. It happens 2 times a year, one in the spring, one in the fall, here in LA. So that's a really good one that I've done a lot lately.
And just to piggyback on that, ones that worked for me, because Little Black Book is fantastic, but I think you have to be like of a certain level to go. And as an assistant, which many of you ASU folks will start as, a great one is JHRTS, which is the Junior Hollywood Radio Television Society. Yes, it's that long of a title. So they have the junior version for assistants, the associates version for kind of like mid-tier career people, and then the HRTS, which is for bigger people. And the other one I really liked coming up was Film Independent, because they do a lot of screenings, a lot of educational stuff. Every year they do the director spotlight. They do like drinks mixers every month. So those were 2 that I really enjoyed, but there's a number of them. I mean, just Google,
Well, and just be out there, like I go to theater stuff, and like I'm in like Highland Park area. I go to like, like super underground concerts, and then they're like, one of the cool kids is a writer, an exec, or works for like, so-and-so, or is like the heir to this fortune. It's LA. Like, it's like, you never know. You build a relationship, and then like 2 months later, you're like, hey, let's like get to know each other when we're sober. And then you sit down, and it's like, oh yeah, my dad's so-and-so, and like he runs Amblin, and da 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 da, and you're like, what the hell? Like, you just meet people that you get along with, and there's some weird shift or shape of like, there's some reason that they're loosely involved with the entertainment industry. I couldn't tell you how many clients I've signed going to random events. I couldn't tell you how many artist connects that I have for music, for certain things. You just meet some really interesting people by just stepping outside of your comfort zone. I mean, it's like, it's such a big city, but it's such a small city because we are like an entertainment capital. But yeah, anyways.
I'll jump on that again as well. This same book, this same client, Judy Heumann, she came to me from an agent that I was an agent with at Acme Talent Literary. So he recommended her to me. So I wouldn't have had this client if not for that relationship with Stuart, who was an agent with me in 2000, 2001, 2002. So.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. Those are all really valid points. And I think, to continue to expand on that too, not just networking events, but taking opportunities for, if you have a chance to go to social gatherings, even birthdays, even brunches, you never know who's going to bring their friend. And that really expands those opportunities of doing that. But then that also leads to my next question that, I think also maybe Dan will have some good tools on is, obviously, these events require people to be very social. And, you know, for people who are extroverts, it's a little bit easier to put yourself out there and go to these events, but not everybody are extroverts. There are a lot of people who are introverts, and it's a little bit harder to be in these social settings and navigate these terrains, and would love advice for those, you know, who find that intimidating or that anxiety on what to do to overcome that fear, because ultimately that is a necessity in order to really network, and it may be harder for others to really figure that out.
Yeah, are you going to speak on it, Dan? I can speak on it. You can piggyback off me.
Fine.
Is it?
Fine,
I mean,
bro. Whatever.
I masquerade as an extrovert, and I get mad anxiety every time there's a social networking thing. And so some days I can't even, this is just being too honest, sometimes I can't even leave the house. I think Dan and I talked about this, like when we were playing basketball and all stuff. It's like, I can get there, but sometimes if I have this feeling, I was gonna say, like, people, I ask them to ask me to go with them to these things, because I can, if I bring one person, I can open up. It's just, I have a hard time if I know I'm going by myself and it's 30 people and I don't know if one person's going to be there, or 40 people. And so, you know, like one of my tricks that I've learned at an older age, maybe it's just a lifetime of partying, and that's got me to this point with this anxiety, but like, just bring a friend that you like, kind of share this thing together, and then just branch out. Anyway, I'll let you take it from there, Dan. But
yeah, and I'm also like kind of the worst. Like I feel like I'm pretty much friends or friendly with like everybody in like Amy's group, but then I don't hang out with any of them, and they don't invite me to anything. But they all say they like me. But I've also made it readily apparent that I don't do anything. I do drinks and all that, of course. But I second what Derek said, which is I will always, like, if it's something like Little Black Book where I know I'm gonna know 120 out of 140 people there, like I'll show up and not worry about it. If it's something where I'm like, oh man, I could use a wing person, I will absolutely 100% try to get somebody I know and go with them and push them and annoy them into going with me. So that way, at least I know I have an anchor. But the point is, just force yourself to figure it out. The great thing is, if you don't have anybody to talk to, you can always step in the corner and get on your phone, because that's everybody. As opposed to like before we all had phones, then you have no excuse for being a loser standing there doing nothing. So, you know, find your own shelter. But I think it's just about, naturally, I don't like parties. I don't like big gatherings. I don't like having anxiety attacks, but I just know where I like to be and where I don't like to be. But you just have to do it. Just do it. And then the more people you know, the easier it's going to get over time, because then you know everybody.
I'd like to add too. I am not an introvert. I am very extroverted. So, you know, I understand it's a little easier for, don't shake your head at me, John. But I think, you know, some tips are, you know, Derek had mentioned bring a friend. I also recommend get a drink. Not too many, but just enough so you feel all right. But also, I think one of the things is like calling out the awkwardness of the situation, because at a networking mixer, like nobody feels comfortable. And everybody knows what you're there for and what you're trying to do. So, you know, it's totally okay to just walk up and be like, hey, why are you here? How'd you come by this place? You know, just don't think you have to be smooth. Like there's a way to kind of just go after it and like let it all kind of happen. That's kind of my little tip.
I'll add one little thing to that. By the way, I will often at events, if I don't know somebody and I'm not introduced, be like, hey, you know, where do you work and how important are you? And it always, you know, puts people off guard and makes them laugh because they realize what we're really doing there. The other thing that I will say, and this is me because I'm judgmental, is be careful about your alcohol consumption. It's like, it's interesting because we're all humans, but at the same time, like I'll see certain sides of people that I'll remember. It doesn't mean I necessarily think of them less. And I've been in social situations with numerous people who will be unnamed who I've seen wasted, and that's fine. But like, you know, I don't know. I never let anybody see me at other than what I want them to see me as. And I think in a town where image control is so important, I recommend trying to be careful about that. By the way, those situations where I've seen people like that, most of the people, it was a long time ago, and now they're like would clutch their pearls about being seen in such a way now. But the point is, you know, you only have one first impression, so be careful about it and try to control your image in the way that you present yourself. And also, by the way, as somebody wearing a hoodie, take it with a grain of salt, although I'm in my home, which is, you also want to dress the part to an extent. So like I'm at a point where like I work for a pretty casual company, but like now I have responsibilities. We're growing our department and all this stuff, and it's like, ah, shit, I should be tucking my shirt in and wearing a belt. But you know what? That's the way that I need to be seen. So I need to project myself. Or the same way if I have and the way I'm going to address meeting somebody, one of my fellow execs on this call, or taking a video chat with them right now during the pandemic is going to be different than if I have a video chat with a writer. I'm going to look more like the part that I should look like. So keep in mind that your image is important.
Dive in, Chris.
Am I muted? Hello, can you hear me? It's kind of funny. Sometimes it's to kind of piggyback on what Derek was saying. I mean, I don't consider myself an extrovert at all. I'm actually much more like sociable introverts. Going to networking events I'm very, very, very shy getting in. Like I have a lot of anxiety, like he was saying, but I also know it's like necessary. So I throw myself into it. The one thing that I always kind of get, like, Dan was saying, like, who are you and why are you important? It's like, like you kind of get that sense from people, like they're trying to like, sniff you out to find out if you have any like social value to them. Just be cool, make jokes. Like I'm a total nerd, so I wear it on my sleeve, and like people think that's kind of like fun. It's true. I hate going to parties. Like track event networking events are cool, but parties I just avoided them like crazy because I just couldn't take the pressure of it, because that's a little bit different than industry networking, which is kind of helping your career. A house party or whatever, it's like, so I avoided them like crazy. I was going back in the chat. I finally discovered how to open that up. So there was like one best piece of advice you received in regards to working in the industry. Have an opinion. It sets you apart. It sets you above a lot of people. And like this helps in social environments and networking environments, is like have an opinion on stuff. Have an opinion on everything you've seen. That's why I got my first job, is because I was happy to talk about every movie I'd seen. You find then you have like a core group, and that just starts to build and build and build and build. And then you don't have so much anxiety when you go out and you see like the 20, 30 people that, you consider pretty good friends, because then you can just like insulate yourself in the middle of that, group and not worry about it.
Awesome. Wei, did you want to chime in at all?
I think everyone said right on, and I'm not, I am an introvert, but I think what would help is also knowing a lot about the industry, what's going on in the industry, because a lot of those talks are going to be about business. So understanding what's going on in the industry right now, what are the top shows, top movies, whatever. I think that can help. And I will say, when I started, I too had a hard time kind of going to parties, but I went to places that kind of helped me warm up. I went to places that had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. I don't know if you guys heard of Mindshare LA. It's a lot of events around Los Angeles, not right now, obviously, but it's about different passions. That's not just the industry. I went there by myself. I didn't know anyone there. And, if I didn't feel like talking to anyone, I left, but I did try every single time. And that kind of got me used to, being in these kind of large gatherings. So you don't just have to network at industry places, go other places and, find your method, find what works for you.
Awesome. And then I have one more question, and then I'm going to have Ben open up to the Q&As with for everyone else who has it for the group. Obviously, we're in a unique time right now where there's a lot of uncertainty, and, I don't know how many of us experienced the recession that happened in 08, but, obviously there's a lot of parallels that people are comparing it to. And for those who are graduating or soon to be graduating, this industry is clearly affected and will continue to be affected. And there's been a lot of opinions as to what will be the future of the industry, and whether this is actually a really good time based on the fact that, you know, there may be more opportunities when it comes to production, or what will, you know, is streaming the main content source? And like, if you're a writer director, you know, are you assuming that you'll basically be selling everything to Netflix and every streamer? I think it'd be great if you guys can just kind of share your thoughts on those who are graduating or soon to be graduating, what maybe to expect and how to navigate kind of breaking into this industry that's now going to be evolving differently than when it was 3 months ago. Tegan, if you maybe, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think everybody can sort of hypothesize what it's going to look like, but like, honest to God, like nobody knows what's happening. I guess my advice would be get really good at using your computer. You know, become a champion of Zoom and learn how to conference calls on your iPhone. And because again, there is a chain that you have to kind of work your way up, and coming right out of school, you're going to start as an assistant. And right now, and I don't know how long it will last, many interviews will be done over Zoom. A lot of the stuff you're going to be doing is via email, via phone. So to really have those skills is good. And then, you know, to harken back what Wei was saying about networking and knowing the industry, you know, do your research so that when you are in interviews or, you know, doing some kind of social distance networking, that you're really well informed, because that's what that's kind of the beauty of this time, is that we have time to read and watch and do all of those things that a lot of times we don't have the time to do because we're so busy running here and there and production and this and that. So, you know, really study your craft, I guess, and really learn your technology, because somebody like me would hire you to help me with my technology. Good God.
And I'll just add to that, you know, this pandemic has brought in a whole new thing, you know, pitching via Zoom and pitching via video calls. And, you know, this is something that we've never done. It seems like it's much more effective to be in a room and to pitch the ideas. But, you know, with that being said, it's so much easier to display a PowerPoint presentation or a video via Zoom or Blue Jeans or all these other apps that are video conferencing, and it's working. I didn't sell it, but we sold a book to DreamWorks 4 years ago, and DreamWorks just pitched it via Zoom, or Blue Jeans actually, to Netflix, and sold it to Netflix, a TV show that'll be an animated TV show in, you know, a year and a half or 2 years from now. So it's happening, and it's working very thoroughly. So yeah.
I mean, I was gonna piggyback, like just get on Script Collective, get an internship, and read every script you see that's in the trades. Read every script that was in the blacklist for the last like 4 or 5 years, and really just do like a crash course, like reading of like everything that's making moves in Hollywood. That's kind of like what I did when I first got in. It's like I read everything, and then I don't know, like that's the way you can teach yourself while you're looking for opportunities and getting an idea of what you're into and whatnot. I don't know. That's like,
and adding to that really quick, read
Yeah.
the trades. That's very, very
Yeah.
important. Read the trades every single day. I read them every day. In fact, when I was an assistant at Paradigm in 1998, 1999, whenever it was, my job every morning was to read the trades and to write a highlight of all the TV stories. So I would highlight all the TV stories and send that to everyone at Paradigm. I did it every single day. So read the trades. And when you see a friend in the trades, email that friend and say, hey, congrats on this. You know, because it's all these little successes that make our lives, and we don't get them very often. But these little successes, and you know, it takes a miracle to making a film. Making a film is a mini miracle. So all these little miracles getting up to that point are huge for us. So hearing anyone say, hey, I saw that in the trade, that touches us. It really warms our heart when somebody says that. So
And then in terms of people who are looking to get into production, obviously there's a new world for production. And I think maybe Chris, on the independent production side of things, for those figuring out how to, when would production start? How long will that take? What's that world going to look like if they're looking to try to get into that field? Is there anything that you could potentially recommend or think about if you were in their position, what to do in these next, end of the year, as things are evolving?
Learn how to test for COVID. You'll be on every set.
I mean, I don't want to go too far into the weeds of like, I'm putting together a production plan right now for a small low budget indie horror to go in August, September. So I've been doing some very extensive research on safety, COVID, post-COVID. We're very far away from it being a truly safe place. So we need to find safe ways to do things. In terms of like big advice, I mean, I went to grad school. I didn't go to film school. I lied my way through. I just let people assume I went to USC film school because I went to USC. So I'm like, but I didn't have that education from film school. So when I was coming up, I had to work extra hard to understand the maze of names, to understand who's important on the call sheet that my boss needs to know is called like left word. Like, last thing I do at the end of the day, be like, oh yeah, Dana Goldberg called you like 8 hours ago. And then it's like, what? So that was like important information for me to pick up. And then the other thing, when I kind of started moving into independent production, I kind of realized, when you come through the world of development, they always say it's like you have to, assistant at an agency or management company. That way you learn who's important. That way you learn like the best way to navigate Hollywood, yada, yada, yada. I didn't do that. Again, I just kind of cheated my way into, my first assistant position job because I had an opinion. I realized a lot of people on that side of the business don't understand production. And so I think what I want to tell people is like, go PA for 6 months. You learn how a set runs. You don't have to be like a grip PA, but if you just be a production PA, you learn what every single job is and like take notes. On my first associate producer job, I mean, because I was like the producer's unit assistant, I had a lot of downtime. So I literally shadowed everybody on that set. It was a Blumhouse set, so it was a pretty small crew. But I was like, I need to know what your job is. What do you do? Like, because that way I needed to learn these tools so that if I'm actually running a show, I can identify where the problems are.
Awesome.
I mean, there were president of production put a hand on the phone and be like, what does an assistant director do? And I'm like, stuff like that. The more you can learn, like PA for 6 months, if that's not for you, at least you got a great education. Then go be an assistant at an agency or management company. I think that's, good advice. You learn how these things work. And then as a producer, you throw everything out the window every day anyway. So, you have to learn to do this stuff every single time. So that's my nihilistic advice.
Awesome. And then Ben, go to the group questions if you want to let us know.
Sure. We have a question from Mariah about credits. You want to? So Mariah?
Yes. Hello, all. I was just wondering how important are credits on your own and other people's projects, and especially with executive producer jobs. I always thought of that as the person who finances the whole thing, but I know there might be different definitions for that. So I want to get your thoughts on that.
I'll go. Executive producers can finance. It's also a vanity title a lot of times. Managers will have them if their client is the star of it. The star will have it even though they didn't really do any of the producing. But as far as, I'm just trying to put it in the frame of student credits. And for me, when I would look at resumes, like trying to fill assistant positions, it was always off-putting to see credits from films, because I think that's not what they're hiring you for. You know, they're hiring you to answer a phone, or do a Zoom or whatnot. So you want to show where your interests lie, but you don't want them to kind of overshadow the skill set that they need you for. It's this delicate balance of the job you want to get versus the job you eventually want to have. And I worked in management, so it's like, if I know a lot of people in managements or agencies are off put by writers. It's like, if I'm a lit manager, I don't want a writer working on my desk, because they're always going to be like, hey, will you read my stuff? So there's that. So you really need to balance it. Like, you should always be kind of editing your resume and your cover letter for whatever job you're applying for. But I always like to think of it, and I think I said this when we did the panel before, it's like industry empathy. Think about what the person you're talking to or applying with wants to see and what they need, not what you want to tell them, what they need to see, right? And they don't need to see your credits. If it's a production job, like Christian was just talking about, yeah, they want to know that you did those things. But if it's an agency job, they don't care, so it's a delicate balance, which a lot of this industry is, but that's kind of my take on it. Christian.
Me again. As an independent producer, that one thing, I don't know if this is going to be helpful information or not, but if your credits, I'm also wondering if you're talking about like titles, like producer title versus like an associate producer, executive producer, co-producer. They're really important. Like, one, in terms of, when you're kind of starting out, the deals you kind of get, because you always have to go into a co-production deal with somebody, the deal terms you get are going to be miserable when you don't have any credits. And that's one thing you just have to kind of know. Like my first, project I set up independently, like the business affairs office took a look at my resume. It's like, oh, he has 2 associate producer credits. All right, well, they gave me like a terrible deal and they were giving me a terrible deal on a project I had legit been producing, Capital P producing for years. So I hope this is answering your question, but it's like, credits are really, really, really important, because it kind of establishes, it depends on how much of like the overall picture you're going to be allowed to see. When you're an associate producer, you're kind of seeing this much. When you're the EP, you're seeing a much bigger sense of it. When you're the full-on Capital P producer, you're seeing everything. You're looking behind the veil at the absolute insanity that is how this all works. But you have to fight for it. You have to fight for your credits. You have to not let them screw you over. It does happen. So.
Yeah, and I'll add to that really quick. I pitched a TV or a feature film to Will Ferrell a little over 5 years ago, and since I had nothing in my credits at the time, Legendary says, "Oh, we don't really need you, so we'll do this," blah blah blah, and I really had to fight to get a co-producer credit on that film, but you keep working your way up, and you keep getting different credits, and you keep you finding different content, and then at some point you're at the place where you're running the show, like with my Judy Heumann book. I'll go back to that one, Being Human. I manage her. I got her book published. And so I'm Capital P producing that one. And that's it's my project. But you keep working your way up to these places, and in these milestones, you keep crossing those. So yeah, it's a lot of work, and it'll take time, and it's not easy. But you'll get there. Persistence is everything.
Awesome. And I know we're going to wrap up quickly, so I'll fit in one more question, Ben, if you want to.
Sure. We have one from YouTube, from Andre Fernandez. Do you think networking will be different after this pandemic? It's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm a big hugger. And I find, like usually when you meet people, like you first shake hands, and then by the time you're done with your conversation, you hug, you go out for drinks, you eat food, like all of that's going to change. And I've always found I build my best connections in person. I've definitely met people over the phone and over Zoom and things like that throughout the years, but it's really, it's just, just so much more tactile and exciting and memorable if you meet them in person. So yeah, I think that'll change, but shit happens. Sorry YouTube, I use the sh word.
Yeah.
And so you gotta roll with the punches. But yeah, it'll be very different, sure.
Absolutely. It's tremendously going to change. And we have no idea what that's going to look like right now. There's just no way to really imagine what that might look like. And even just having drinks with people, what does that look like? Because bars aren't even open. Restaurants aren't even open right now. So that's going to change tremendously. And I wish we had an idea of what that would look like, but we don't. But we'll adapt. And that's part of this business is always adapting, because there's always going to be a roadblock. You just have to find your way around it. So.
Yeah, and I will add though, but in terms of having the opportunity to just reach out to somebody, that's not going to change. Wanting to go and have the conversation and do the networking process, at least in terms of that, that's definitely something that we'll maintain. It's just how it's done is probably going to be different. And fortunately, this hopefully will be temporary. This isn't going to be forever. I'm sure, next year things hopefully will feel like we can go and sit in restaurants and have that conversation. But I think right now, social media and Zoom are activities where you can try to do that. Even like when I have on my schedule lunches, they're like, you want to do it over Zoom? And I was like, why not? So just try to see if you can find alternative formats to have at least that somewhat sense of a networking opportunity. It is a little different when you're in person, but let's hope that's only a temporary situation. Then hopefully things can kind of somewhat feel like we can be in person soon and do that.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, Amy, and the guests. If the students who want to unmute and just give a little round of applause, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
This is how applause sounds in May 2020, I guess.
Thank you guys.
So,
we wouldn't be here without you. So.
Thank you also to the people that joined us on YouTube and for asking questions there. I believe a lot of those questions were answered like just organically, which is really cool. Thank you to the students of the Film Career Bootcamp. If you're a current ASU student, that's something that you can look forward to applying or enrolling in yourself someday. Thank you to the guests, Amy, Adam, everyone on the FilmSpark team for another successful and fun Q&A. I'm going to turn off the live stream right now, and then we're going to be doing our own little mock networking sessions with the students and guests in just a few minutes. So thank you, YouTube, and good